And welcome once again, boys and girls, to the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast on the Paddle and Fin Network. I know you heard the little can opening. I'll be honest with you, it's not a beer. I'm drinking sparkling water. The reason for that is I had a severe case of allergies since I got back from vacation, and man, it's this spring is allergies have been out of whack. So I really shouldn't mix medication, especially when it comes to allergies, with alcohol. So I got the little sparkling water. Hope the little cracking open of that is suffice for you all. So, anyways, got a great episode for you today. I got Brandon from the Dust Off Fishing, one of my favorite content creators, one of my favorite Instagrams account. And I'm really proud to have him come up to the show. I'm a big fan of what he does. He does great service for the community, and it's an honor to have him on the podcast. And we'll be talking a lot about that, and talking about his brand, Dust Off Fishing. If you haven't heard of Brandon and Dust Off Fishing, you can find him on Instagram. Later in our show, he'll tell you where else you can find him. But great content creation, great account in Instagram. If you're in Instagram, go follow him, go support him. Again, you won't be disappointed. A lot of great stuff, not just bass fishing. Other than that, as for me, I just got back from vacation. Like I said, I'm dealing with some allergies, but nothing that's going to kill me. Gotta move forward. Really struggling to find bass. When I left for vacation, water temperatures were in the low 50s. When I got back, they were in the 70s. I was like, good Lord, in a week, it jumped up that much, at least the lakes that I was fishing. So that had me confused. I haven't even found bass in pre-fishing. I got a tournament in Lake Whitney, the North Texas Kayak Fishing Championship. It's run by Duke Tran from Mariner Sales. So if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or just finding a tournament trail that you want to check out, go check out North Texas Kayak Championship. And again, it will be in Lake Whitney this week. And by the time you listen to this, I've already taken part of it, probably skunked, and gave my winnings to somebody else. But maybe I'll find a fish. I am not very good at Lake Whitney. I fished Lake Whitney, never fished it as a tournament. I fished it recreationally, and I found a fish, but nothing that I ever thought this will win me a tournament. It's a very tough lake. I've looked at the history of other tournaments, and I haven't seen like a 90 plus bag to win a tournament. So it is a tough lake. One of the reasons why I wanted to fish it is because I got in May the Hobie BOS at Broken Bow and Lake Windy. I've never been to Broken Bow, but from the research I've done, Broken Bow sets up a lot like Lake Windy. It's going to be different times of year though, so we'll see how that plays out. But I kind of want to get familiar with that type of lake. I am not very good at clear water lakes that have rocky ledges and no grass, and that is pretty much what you have with Lake Windy and Broken Bow. You're not gonna find grass anywhere. It's just gonna be kind of clear water, depending on where you fish, and yeah. So hopefully that'll give me a little bit more confidence going to Broken Bow. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a W or catch a check. But anyways, before we go into my next guest, again, Brandon from Dust Off Fishing, big thank you to my sponsor. Go check them out, douglasoutdoors.com. Find out what is your favorite rod from Douglas. They got the LRS and the X Matrix, and they got award-winning fly fishing rods. So go check them out, douglasoutdoors.com. We'll go to a few commercials for win points, and then we'll be right back with Brandon. Mr. Brandon from Dust Off Fishing. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. And hey, you're gonna catch fish at that Lake Whitney. I just know it.
I hope so. I hope so. Man, it is one of the times that I went, I saw a huge bass. It's really clear water. It's right in front of me. And he's targeting this shad that are into a brush that kind of has been laid out. It's laid down brush, right? So half the brush is on the water, and they're only in a little bowl finding a shelter in that brush. And that bass was just like sitting there watching them come in and out and try and target them. It must have been a 7 or 8 pounder. So one of the biggest bass I've ever seen, man. And I tried. I was so nervous. I tried casting him. I probably spooked him. I even cast right at the brush and got hung up. And then I cut off my line. I left my lure there because I'm like, if I go chase it, I'm gonna, but still couldn't catch it. But we'll see. We'll have fun, man. It's a beautiful lake, though. You ever been to Lake Whitney?
Nope.
You ever fish out of Missouri? You live in Missouri, right, Brandon?
I I do, yeah.
Do you fish a lot out of Missouri?
Like every twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week, just depends. Yeah, I fish a lot.
Oh, really? Oh, oh, so outside of Missouri, you fish a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
Nice.
for your audience, I'm active duty military, and I spend a lot of time temporary duty at other places assigned. And so this year I've spent an exceptional amount of time away from my home, which is in Missouri. And I spent 6 weeks in Alabama in October, and I spent 6 weeks in Arizona in May, and I am now currently in Pennsylvania, spending
Oh,
another
wow.
6 weeks here. So I have a lot of free time ish, like when the evenings are open and I don't have a family here. So, I spend a lot of time packing the kayak up and going and exploring new and fun things.
That's awesome. First of all, thank you for the service you do for the provide for the community. I appreciate we all always appreciate that. Like you said, it takes you a lot of time away from your family, right? I'm assuming going up and down different being different states at different times.
I would say that so I have 21 years in the army, and I would say probably if you totaled up all the time that I spent on deployments and at schools and, you know, just out and about traveling for work, I'd say probably 5 of those years have been away from home. So about a quarter of my military career has been spent elsewhere.
Wow. Do you have immediate family with you? Married, kids, or
Yeah, so I have a 12-year-old daughter named Chloe and my wife Andrea. I've been married to her since 2006. So we're going on our 16th anniversary, which is actually um, in 2 weeks from today.
congratulations. Any plans?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to be in Pennsylvania and she's going to be in Missouri. So,
Oh, man, sorry to
so
hear
I,
that.
I, I plan I plan on Amazoning her some some presents or something. I got to
Oh,
figure
you
that.
make up for it when you go back.
You bet.
So Pennsylvania, got a chance to fish the Susquehanna by any chance?
Yeah. So if you check my page out, I have spent the last 2 days fishing the Susquehanna and absolutely am in love with that fishery. I cannot tell you how amazing the smallmouth bass are in that
Yep.
river. They are built different. I caught so yesterday I went fishing and I caught an 18 and a half inch smallmouth that weighed in just over 3.5 pounds, and
Wow.
I caught that one on a Spro RK50 in a crawdad pattern. I think it's called Red Bug. I also caught a 17-inch smallmouth on a X Zone Lures purple tube jig, and I also caught a 13 and a half that was super fat on a Spro Little John crankbait. So crankbaits were working yesterday. That river is super quick, so you kind of in a kayak it's a little challenging, especially if you don't have power to stay um, in advantageous spots. But if you can find some slack water, you can find some current seams, maybe some eddies. You can really do some damage in that place. And I have not caught a fish out of there that was smaller than 13 inches, and and they're just gorgeous, and they're built like trucks. So very much enjoyed that.
Yeah, the reputation for Susquehanna is kind of legendary when it comes to the fight that those smallmouth have. Um, are you gonna be there for the Hobie BOS tournament? I think it's July 30th to 31st.
No, sir, I head home May 1st. So
Oh,
um, what's kind of funny or interesting about this whole trip is I was a little bummed, if I'm being honest, because the spawn in Missouri is about mid-April,
yeah.
and so I was going to miss the spawn, and then the spawn here is probably not going to start till about early to mid-May. So I'm basically missing two spawns
Yeah.
uh, at at the same time. So I was a little bummed about that because I thought I'd come here and it would still be kind of like winter fishing, tough, kind of a grind, which it kind of has been in some instances, but for the most part, it's been surprisingly good. The water temps yesterday on the Susquehanna were 47, 48, around there. I fished in Maryland last weekend. Water temps there were 53 to 59. That was a little more spawny, if you will, than here. Um, but considering the fact that the proximity to a world-renowned legendary smallmouth fishery is 20 minutes from where I'm currently sitting, I have no complaints.
Yeah, no, 20 minutes to the Susquehanna is not bad at all. What how do you now you obviously have been deployed different times and at different places. How do you like, trail your kayak to whatever your new, destination is going to be for the foreseeable time? Or do you rent, would you buy a kayak there, and sell and then buy another one when you get moved, relocated?
Yeah, well, couple things. The Army will pay for you to fly someplace and rent a car, or they'll pay for you to
Mhm.
drive. But when they pay for you to drive, it's not really worth it because they pay you about
Yeah.
58 cents a mile, which, gas prices are what they are. And I drive a truck,
Yeah.
but um, I decide to drive because I want to be able to take my personal kayak with me. So, what I end up doing is, I mean, I pack up, two tough boxes worth of tackle and 10 rods and a kayak cart. And I take that with me where I'm going. So there is one exception. When I went to Alabama previously, I had a Jackson Bite kayak that had some warranty damage to it. So I sent it in to get a new one. And I didn't have a kayak when I was going to Alabama, but Eco Fishing Shop, which is a nationwide kayak retailer that I am affiliated with. I'm on their pro staff, and they're a really great company. Anyway, they gave me a loaner kayak for that trip, so I took a Van Hunks Pike down to Alabama and fished out of it for 6 weeks. But currently, where I am, I have two kayaks. I have a new canoe, unlimited 12-foot six with a bow mounted XI3 on it that I left at
Nice.
home, and then I brought an Old Town Top Sportsman PDL 106 pedal kayak here. And the only reason I brought that one instead of the new canoe is it's just smaller. It's just easier to kind of get in and out of tough spots. I knew I was going to be doing a
Yeah.
lot of exploring, and I wanted to be able to, you know, have that flexibility of having that pedal drive and maybe fishing some skinnier water. So
Yeah, you kind of like got something that suits the area where you were fishing. Of all the places that you've been deployed and had gone kayak fishing, all that, what would you say is your favorite lake? I'm interested to know since you fished so many places.
right. Well, I'm going to exclude the ones where I live, uh,
Okay.
just because I feel like that's appropriate. But um, my favorite all-time fishing experience happened on Mitchell Lake, uh, at the Mitchell Lake Dam in Alabama. And I say that because where I live, uh, I don't have a lot. There are stripers where I live, but they're not close to me, and I had never caught one before. But at that particular dam, there are stripers everywhere, and I was throwing an A rig, which I don't know if you ever throw an A rig. But in Alabama, you can
Yep.
throw 5 hooks on an A rig, which is awesome. In Missouri, it's only 3 hooks. So I was throwing an A rig on that dam almost every cast, catching a 5 to 15 pound striper. Uh, one after another. Like my arm was hurting. I was catching so many stripers. So or hybrids. So that was and I caught a 4.5 pound spot there that I've never caught a spot that big, so I just can't. For the experience, I can't beat that. But the Susquehanna, I mean, it has a potential if it keeps fishing like it has been to be the number one draft pick here. So we'll see how it goes.
Definitely. Um, any other places that merit an honorable mention?
Um, so I fished a place called the Chester River in Maryland last weekend that I absolutely had a blast fishing that fishery. It has pickerel, it has crappie, it has largemouth bass, and I think I caught. For this time of year, catching 20 fish is kind of rare at the water temps, but I caught I think I caught somewhere around 15 bass, 4 crappie, 2 pickerel, and
Nice.
almost all of them on a jig, about 5 of them on a jerk bait. And I don't know how you feel about jig fishing, but if I love a jig bite because I love just absolutely the viciousness of a hook set on a jig where it's all you got. It's almost like punching, it's everything you got in one spot and just thunk at the end of it. So I really enjoyed that. I had a good time there too.
I have probably one thing in common with Brian Latimer. And that is that we both hate fishing with jigs. Not that we hate, it's just that we're not good at it. Like I can't get a jig bite to save my life. And I've had tons of jigs and I've tried it. Trust me, I tried it, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Now I'll put a bullet weight on it, same trailer, and a uh, Texas rig hook, and I'll catch the crap out of it. But for whatever reason, I don't know. I've tried flipping jigs, I tried football jigs, and I've watched all the videos, read all the blogs, and I still, for the life of me, can't get. I think I've gotten like maybe 1 or 2 bites on a jig that I can remember. And honest to God, I've tried it, and I agree with you. It's a great bite. Like when you do get a jig bite, I can see why everybody loves it. But for whatever reason, I don't know why. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm still working on it. Usually, I'll just do a
Well, I
bullet
think
weight.
part of it is I think part of it is who you fish with and where you fish and how you, and I know that's probably the same thing with every technique there is, but um I in the army we have this thing called primacy. And primacy is basically the overlaying of information on something you learned first. So the reason that I like fishing with a jig mostly is because when I was relatively new to fishing, I fished with people that like to fish with jigs. And
Mhm.
I watched what they did and I learned how to skip a jig and I knew where the spots were to catch them and I knew specifically one of the reasons I caught a bunch of fish last weekend was because the bite was super slow. So I just started hitting grass and what I would do is I would flip into the grass, I'd drag it 6 inches to the where the grass ended. I'd let the jig fall. I'd give it 2 pops. If I didn't catch a fish by then, I'd reel it back in and I'd do it again. And I probably did that hundreds of times, and it's just a probability thing at that point. It's like at some point you're going to put a jig in front of a fish's face and they're going to eat it. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like I call it the Kevin Van Dam approach. It's just work fast, work quick, cover water, and catch fish. And so sometimes that works. In the winter time, sometimes you have to let a jig drag and sit in front of a fish's face, and you got to work football jigs off points. And so it's really all about just getting comfortable with an application and having confidence in a bait. And if Texas rig is your confidence over jig, to me, they're probably going to catch the same fish. So just fish what you're comfortable with and what you feel confident in, and it took me a long time. Like it's kind of like glide baits. You have to commit. You have to
Yeah.
basically just take a box of jigs out with you. That's all you have,
Yeah.
and just
I
fish with
agree.
it. Same with glide baits. If you want to get better at glide baits, because you're not going to get a bite instantly. It may take 100, 200, 300 casts, but I've always had people say, "I'm looking for the right bite," and you just need 5 of the right bites. You don't need 50 fish, especially in tournaments. And so,
Yeah.
if you feel like the conditions merit a jig, jigs get big bites a lot of the time. If the conditions merit it, like the guy who just won the Bassmaster Classic, he won that tournament on a jujitsu jig from War Eagle with the standard, net bait craw or whatever as a trailer. So nothing fancy, nothing great. He just caught big fish on that jig. So if you think the conditions are right and you have confidence in it, then just fish with it. But if you don't, it's not going to do you any good because you're going to give it like 5 or 10 casts. You're going to go, nope, this isn't working. You're going to put it away and you're going to fish with what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things, and I always a big proponent on that. If you want to learn something, find the right conditions, time of year that that bait should work, and just take that bait with you, nothing else, and just work on it. Obviously, if you're not gonna throw like if somebody is not comfortable with a jerk bait, don't throw in the middle of summer because you're probably not gonna get any bites. Throw where it's gonna work. And same thing with frog bite. You're not gonna throw frog bite in the dead of winter because it's not gonna work. But once you do get into the conditions, okay, this should be ideal for that. Let me just go ahead and try it. And yeah, you're right. I mean, for whatever reason I've just struggled with it. But hopefully it'll come a time where it'll be a strength and not a weakness. Moving on from other stuff, Brandon, I wanted to ask you. I know you served in the military for 21 years. You mentioned, right?
Uh huh.
And you currently you're a helicopter pilot, correct?
That's correct.
You've been deployed a couple of times.
Yes, sir.
What does kayak fishing mean to you when it comes to kind of like relaxing in from the hecticness of being on the military and being deployed, and what advice do you have to anybody um that has experience has to deal with that?
I just think that if people are struggling with PTSD or issues, there are multiple ways to cope, if you will, with those problems in a constructive manner. You don't necessarily want to have destructive tendencies when you're dealing with those problems. So, the thing that kayak fishing does for me, and I think you can probably agree with this, is that you can go places in kayaks that you can't go in regular sized boats.
Oh
And
yeah.
you can spend days on the water not seeing a single person. And there are days like that that's all I want to do is just be on the water alone with my own thoughts and just trying to, work through, I think subconsciously work through your issues while you're fishing, but consciously you're trying to catch fish. But at the end of the day, you find yourself feeling a little more accomplished and a little more at peace. So, yeah, I've dealt with PTSD. I've had issues with that in the past. If you have problems with PTSD and fishing or weightlifting or hunting or whatever it is that you do to deal with those problems doesn't help, it's okay to go talk to people. I've talked to people, professional people, about my issues, and you're not a weak person because you have to go
Mhm.
find therapy or help to work through stuff. Really, it's kind of like fishing with a professional. You can go out and you can fish and you can not catch fish and you can flounder around, or you can have a professional show you how to fish and how to catch fish. And then when you leave that person, you have more tools in your toolbox to deal with those issues. So, but yeah, I think fishing definitely gives me an outlet to kind of cope and deal with the everyday stress that we all kind of feel on a regular basis.
That's a great analogy and comparison, right? Once you mentioned, if you want to learn to kayak fish, then you go to a professional if you want to learn how to deal with certain issues. And that applies to everyone. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody that's a veteran or has been involved in deployments in the armed forces, but could be somebody that has had gone through a tragic event in their lives, or suffers maybe from emotional or mental disabilities that may be triggered. But again, same thing. Finding kayak fishing is it's a good mixture of, I think, relaxation. Like you mentioned, you can be out in the water, be with no one, and just be with your thoughts, and kind of give you time to give yourself time to clear your mind. But at the same time, or in order to catch a fish, it seems like it needs a lot of focus, right? Trying to figure out the bite, and once you figure it out, then you're catching fish, and that just gives your mind kind of something constructive, like you just mentioned, not destructive, something constructive, and distracting at the same time from some other issues. And again, I'm not a professional about it, but I think that's one of the things that I think we can all agree on when it comes to kayak fishing. Just the nature of just being out there on the water, being calm, and just the focus of trying to catch a fish helps a lot of people. And again, we thank you for the sacrifices you've done for the community in order to self it. I know it's both for you and for a lot of people. There's a price that comes with it, and I think we should all honor that and do our best to can to support, um, in whatever way we can, support those that have supported the community in the past. I noticed on your Instagram account you are involved with some veterans programs related to fishing. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what role do you play, and what are these organizations or programs built for?
So a friend of mine named John Morris, who is Morris Fly Company, had kind of shown me a veterans charity called Rifles to Rods, which is basically a non-for-profit that takes people that are vets, and they take them fishing, and they you know do all the things: rods, tackle, guides, locations, boats. And so I was a little inspired by that, and a friend reached out to me from Kingdom Crappie Lures, and he asked me if I'd be willing to support him in you know a, a partnership to bring some money to a veterans charity. So we put together a post and an auction, basically, and you can bid on these crappie lures. In fact, I think you can still bid on them till the end of April. And 100% of the profits go to Rifles to Rods. I also support Veterans Fishing. A guy named Matthew runs that page, and he's a great guy, and he gives a lot of money to various veterans charities. And a lot of his he sells merchandise, and he does raffles and stuff like that, and it basically goes to veterans charities like Rifles to Rods, Wounded Warriors, stuff like that. That we can all kind of get behind. And
Definitely.
I'm always kind of looking to help out vets. There's a guy that's running a giveaway right now that's specifically for a veteran nominated winner. I actually won a kayak through the Veterans Charity raffle that I redonated to another vet, which is only possible because companies like Eco Fishing Shop sponsor
Mm.
me and put me in a kayak, and I'm lucky enough to not need that. And so you can only have so many kayaks.
Yeah.
uh, you want to give back to people. So um, and if anybody's listening to this and they want to do something for a veterans charity, they have any agendas or anything that they think they might want my help with, I'm most certainly open to that as well. So I will probably be more involved on a full time basis with something veteran related as I transition from the military into retirement.
Mm.
But as you know, being a father and a husband and a fisherman and a pilot, and all those things take time, and so we don't want to sacrifice time with our loved ones too much
Yeah.
for those other things. But I certainly help where I can and when I can, as much as I can.
Of course. And segue into that, if you said people can reach you and and you can point them the right direction if they want to help any of these organizations. Let's talk a little bit about your social media account, your Instagram account. Other than Instagram, which is dustoff_fishing, what other social media venues you have that people can reach out to you?
I have a TikTok and a YouTube, and both are dust off fishing. I think just regular dust off space fishing on YouTube, and then dust off underscore fishing on TikTok. But the YouTube is something that I started this year. We're up to a little over 300 subs, which is not, a ton, but um, YouTube takes a lot more time than I
Yeah,
mean. It takes a lot more time on the back end than it
yeah,
does Instagram. And so what I found is editing videos and finding your kind of niche in that has been a little more difficult for me than I care to admit. And we always grow in those things. So I had a goal this year of putting out one a week. I think I'm probably going to reconsider that goal
I know what you mean.
and try to do one a month. I've got like an archive of like 40 fishing trips that I have yet to publish. So, I if I could give anybody any advice on any of the social media stuff is that, give yourself some slack. Like,
Yeah,
don't take it so seriously. I've spent inordinate amounts of time liking, commenting, posting, fishing, taking pictures, videos, editing, and don't get me wrong, it pays off, but because you miss a day or you miss a week or you didn't get a video out when you like it should be fun. So
yeah,
if it's fun, find a way to make it fun. Otherwise, don't do it because we don't want things in our lives that don't enhance our lives. And if it's not enhancing your life because you feel stress or pressure, just give yourself some slack and put the video out when you feel like it.
yeah. I agree. You have to enjoy it. I've gone through the same thing creating content for YouTube, and it first of all the fish has to cooperate, otherwise it's just a 10-minute video of you casting into trees or getting snagged and all that, at least in my case. um but yeah, man, the back end of it, just editing and trying to put your personality into how you edit in, it takes a lot of work. And so I've found I have a lot more respect for content creators than I did when I started this, because it's not as easy as people think it is. I mean, there's a lot of editing involved, and if you want to do it right, and if you want to put your own stamp on it and not just do the generic stuff that everybody does, then to stand out, it's even harder. Um, but going into your Instagram account, how did and all your social media, honestly, how did the name Dust Off Fishing come off?
Yeah, so one of my deployments to Afghanistan was with a medical evacuation company, and the call sign for that mission set is dust off. So anywhere you go in the world, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, anywhere United States Army medical evacuation are in helicopters, their call sign is dust off. So a lot of people think dust off is like my name, Dusty or Dustin or whatever, but it really has historical roots in Korea and in Vietnam, and basically like dust off is was coined at those points in time. So I had toyed around with some names: Brandon Official Fishing, Brandon Fishing. None of it really caught. I picked that out, and I had a friend of mine just tell me like, "Yeah, that's what it is. It just needs to be that." And so, and like just like anything, bass, kayak, beers, like that.
Yeah,
That kind of just solidifies in people's brain cavities, and then it just is who you are.
yeah,
So there is no going back. You know, I guess you could, but I've spent money on, just like you have, logos and T-shirts and merchandise and stickers, and getting that brand out there and getting support behind it. So once it's there, and it's just kind of stuck. And to be honest with you, that was my favorite deployment. It was my favorite mission. I think there's nothing more honorable than helping people that need help at their most critical times. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for medics, especially because our medics have put their hands in places that nobody wants to put their hands, and they
yeah.
needles places nobody wants to stick needles, and they've smelled and seen things that nobody wants to smell and see. Um, so yeah, I mean that's just kind of how it came about and kind of stuck.
Kind of like the unsung heroes in a way, just trying to help the ones that have been affected and wounded, and it's it kind of I'm sure it's an assignment that often gets overlooked, but it's just as bit of as important as any other assignment, um, in in the armed forces community. So I'm sure you're pretty proud of what you've done there, and it reflects on your Instagram. I love on your stories when you put you in the. I think sometimes you'll post a picture of you in the helicopter, stuff like that. I really enjoyed it, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about your social media. That it reflects not just fishing, but who you are and what fishing means to you. Um, and honestly, something you should be proud of. Regardless, I mean, I know you have over 12,000 followers, and some people that might be a lot. For some people, that may be not that big of impressive. Regardless, you should be proud of what you're doing and the quality of your content. What made you decide that you wanted to start doing that and branch out into just your favorite hobby, your favorite pastime, into put it into social media?
So my wife had started a home decor type of Instagram at one point, and she had kind of gotten in her head that she wanted to become an influencer and do that sort of thing. And I had never really thought about that at the time. But as I was posting, as I was getting more into fishing, I was posting fishing on like my personal page, which is private. Um, I was finding that like people didn't care, honestly. Like I caught a 5 pound bass, everything's great to her. So Um, I wanted to find a way to engage with people that was more meaningful in a sport and a passion that I was trying to grow and improve in. And Instagram, to its credit, has really um, taken me to some places and some people that have taught me and shown me more things than I would ever have known had I had to try to figure these things out on my own. So anyway, I created a public page, and then I kind of found a way. Um, I kind of came up with a method or a strategy to build my page and my brand. And as I did that, I started being, seeing and being reached out to for um, partnership opportunities and monetary compensation and things like that. Um, and I'm the kind of person that once I've kind of, you know, dedicated myself to something, I always tell people I don't do things half ass. I do them whole ass.
Mhm.
So, uh, I really just kind of, I had a goal of 10K. That was the goal. Um, Unimaginably, I reached that goal, which I always tell people nobody follows. Uh, it's hard as just an average guy who lives in the Midwest, who's not famous, who's not a professional, and to get 10,000 followers. You really have to work
Mhm.
to do that. And so I get it. Like, not everybody that follows me is a real person or cares but I really take pride in my engagement numbers, how many comments I have, how many likes I have. But those are directly reflecting on how much I engage with other people's pages. And so I you know, I found that if you want, and I have a 5 tips to grow your Instagram on my YouTube page. It was a super quick video I did, but if you want more engagement, be more engaged. You want more
Yeah.
follows, more people. Um, you want to grow your brand. You have to be consistent, and you have to
Mhm.
post daily, and you have to figure out when the best time to post is. And there's secrets and keys to all of that. But if you're just a guy who wants to post pictures of your fish once a week, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But if you want to grow to 12,000, you got to post twice a day. You got to take pictures. You got to be the weird guy at the event that
Yeah.
video- videoing like the high five. Like you got to sit here. I'm sitting in a room. with a guy that's in my class. I'm here for a Blackhawk course on a podcast with you, and that's probably weird to most people, but it's closer to the Wi-Fi puck. So I said, "Hey, man, can I do this in your room?" And here we are. So you just got to be comfortable in your own skin,
Yeah.
and if you want this to be everything it can be, then you have to dedicate and you have to change your mentality about what you're doing when you're doing it. You have to be the guy who has just as much camera equipment as he has tackle when he goes on a boat.
Yep.
So once you commit and dedicate to that, and it doesn't matter who you are, you just have to figure out what your flavor is, if you will, what you like. I You were talking about content that you liked, and noticing how well people do things. So there's this girl that I follow. Her name's Lindsay. I'm gonna butcher this name, but it's like Skolakowski or something like that.
Hmm.
And she did a reel today, and it was about cleaning her fishing bibs after a long winter season. But it was a very well constructed, very well put together. I know it took a lot of work, kind of thing. And I just told her, I said, look, DSG is lucky to have you because I know how hard you worked at this and how talented you are to have to put this together. And I commented that on her post, and that probably made her day. I don't know if it did or didn't, but if you can genuinely just look at somebody's product and you are appreciative of it, just tell them, because it doesn't
Hmm.
take to be nice to people. You know what I mean?
That's true. And that's very true. And I think it motivates all of us as a content creator, mainly just podcast. I feed off of what my listeners tell me. If my listeners reach into my DM and say, "Hey, you know what? We love what you're doing. Or love this episode. I love this conversation." I mean, that's motivation. That's fuel for me to keep going, even when it's constructive criticism. Like the last few episodes, I didn't notice my audio was really low, and then a couple of people messaged me like, "Hey, man, yeah, we love your episode, but your audio is really low, and your guest audio is really high." I'm like, and I thanked them, like, "Dude, that's awesome that you told me that, because I didn't notice that, because for the most part, I don't have time to listen to my podcast once I finish recording, editing it, and the way it sounds on my editing studio, for whatever reason, it comes out very different when it gets posted um, on the podcast platform. I don't know why, but it does happen. So going back to what you're saying, it's nice when people value what you're doing. It kind of gives you a little bit of fuel for the fire and motivation to keep going, knowing that you make a difference um, in somebody's people fishing experience. I I agree completely with what you're saying, being comfortable in your skin. I've one that kind of like struggled with that at the beginning, because when you're out on the lake or you got people watching you, not that you're not gonna be genuine about it. Like, I don't think you should. I wouldn't encourage anybody to make this fake identity or fake personality just to entertain people. Your personality is what your personality is, and that's what it should transmit in your social media. But sometimes being excited about something that ordinarily, when you have you're grabbing your phone, you're taking selfies, you're taking video selfies of you and all that, or have cameras pointing at you like your GoPro, and then there's people around. There's kind of like an audience around because you're fishing in a popular area. You get like, I for one get shy, that I don't, that people look at me like, "Oh, what is this weirdo? Oh, he's one of those." But you have to be comfortable in your skin. You have to, you know, do kind of noise cancellation, be yourself in front of the camera. It doesn't matter what other people, onlookers, are doing. Just do what you want to do and love it, and share it. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of people struggle with that. I, for one, struggle with that at the beginning. Just kind of like, what are people wondering about me if I'm recording a solo conversation, while I'm walking to the ramp on my GoPro, but it's interesting. Now, you when did you started doing the whole social media thing? When did that begin? As far as Instagram or whatever your first social
No,
media account was.
November 6th, 2020.
Oh, so it hasn't been that long, and you already at 12,000 followers. That's a big accomplishment, man. I mean,
That's hours, hours,
yeah.
man. But yeah, I appreciate that.
What how do you, let me ask you this, 'cause I'm very impressed in with your pictures. Do you have somebody with you that takes these pictures, or is this just you by yourself editing the pictures? Because you have some nice quality, nice color in your pictures, um, good angles, creative angles. Is that just you, or do you have some help with it?
I have a friend of mine at home. We basically create content for one another when we fish.
Mm,
Whenever I'm fishing with somebody, and like I said, you kind of got to be weird a little bit. But like if
yeah.
you put this in portrait mode, put this down here, move it down a little bit, you kind of have an eye for what angles work. One of the biggest things I will tell people is like, yes, take good pictures, but one, have a good phone that if you can afford it, and then two, have an editing process. Now, I personally I use Lightroom a lot, which is by
Mm,
Adobe, and I paid for some presets that early on, long time ago, that I use quite a bit, and that shrinks the amount of time that I have to adjust, lighting and things. But a free app that you guys can use that works really good is uh, Photoshop Express by Adobe. They have some pretty good filters that are free, and they come with the app. And so, um, you know, it's kind of a combination. I do try to set up the camera to take some pictures on my own, but especially in a kayak, that's really hard to do. So
yeah.
Ryan, which is at the dot real dot yak dot dragger, is a good friend of mine, and he takes a lot of really great pictures, and I appreciate him so very much for doing that.
Yeah, definitely, man. Like I said, you have great content. And for those out there listening, if you haven't gotten the message by now, go follow Brandon at Dust Off Fishing. Well, as far as going beyond content, do you do competitive kayak fishing? Have you done it? Are you interested in it? Would you like to do it if you haven't done it?
So this is my first year, completely 100%. So I'm on Eco Fishing's pro staff team. I have a partner, Ryan, the guy I just talked about, as my teammate. We're going to be fishing 5 events in the Missouri Moyak KBF Tournament Trail Series this year. So my goal is a top 10 team and at least one top five individual
Oof.
for the year. And if this year works out well, then we'll look at All American Kayak Series next year.
Yeah, that's a very good one, especially that they're situated. They're mostly centered out of Missouri or that area. They did bring a trail here to Lake Palestine. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that one. I was really looking into trying to get into the Angler of the Year race, but a lot of the lakes for me were just way a little bit too far, more like 10, 12 hour drives. So that was kind of puts it out of my schedule. But yeah, All American Kayak Series is another national trail that's growing, and we wish them the best. I know they have a lot of tournaments down there in Missouri. I haven't been to Missouri. I fished the Ozarks on the Arkansas area. But tell us a little bit about Missouri. Where in Missouri do you usually fish, and what could people look for when they go if they're thinking of visiting Missouri to go kayak fishing?
The primary place I fish is in the Springfield area, which is generally Table Rock Lake. That lake is a highland reservoir, so think super clear water, boulders,
Yeah.
150 to 180 feet in some places. Bull Shoals is real close as well, which is kind of a similar type of lake. Not a whole lot of docks, mostly just like I said, deep bluff walls and points and flats off channels and stuff like that. If you go a little further to the east, Lake of the Ozarks is my home lake. That's where I grew up. That's a little less. I think it's a lowland reservoir, so it's a little less deep. Generally, you're looking at 20, 2025 is like about as deep as you'll get on kind of like secondary channels. There'll be 60 in the middle, but you don't generally fish that. And they have a ton of docks, but they're not like the docks you fish in the south where they have the poles. These docks are floating. So a lot of cables and skipping and things like that that you can do under those docks. But that's a good place to catch fish too. So those are the primary lakes I fish. You also have Palm de Terre and Stockton Lake in the area. Grand Lake's not too far away. As far as rivers are concerned, you have world class trout fishery. White River, 2 hours south of me. Lake Taneycomo, their world class trout fishery. I think it has the state record of 38 pounds, or maybe it's like the national record, 38-pound brown trout. And we generally fish the James River in Missouri as far as rivers are concerned, or the Finley. So awesome fishing where I live. I like to call it the fishing mecca of the Midwest because all these famous places are, within 2 hours of me, depending on what I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I appreciated when I went to, I mean, that Ozark, even though I just got barely to the border of Missouri, Arkansas, but what I really appreciated is just like you mentioned, world class fisheries, and not just bass. You got largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, you got trout, you got a whole bunch of other species. Typically being in Texas, you just got largemouth bass, and that's it, and crappies, and stripers too. But over there, I think it's a wider range and beautiful area. Ozark was an amazing experience just visiting that area. Very nice, very beautiful. I'm sure you would agree. So, Brandon, what is well, before we get into what is next for dust off fishing, let me ask a couple of fun facts questions about Brandon as it relates to kayak fishing. You ready?
Let's do it.
So, biggest largemouth bass.
5.42 pounds.
Do you know the weight? Not the weight. I'm sorry, the measurement.
22 and a half inches.
That's very nice. Very nice. Smallmouth bass.
Four
Bristol bass.
4.25 pounds, 21 inches.
Nice. That's a nice one too. Was that in Susquehanna?
That one was in um, the Quetico province of Canada,
Oh
North
wow,
Minnesota.
nice. Deployment. I'm assuming or vacation that time.
Vacation, yeah.
Nice. Um, you mentioned you're with New Canoe. You're limited. What is your favorite rod and reel setup?
So I have a don't tell old 18 this, okay? But I have a Champion XP by Dobbins crank and stick that's 6 foot 10 inches, and it's on a Metanium HG by Shimano is on it, and that is such a nice rod and reel. It's hard to beat those Dobbins crank and sticks, and that Metanium is like butter. So
Yeah, it's a nice reel.
yeah,
What is your favorite lure to throw?
a Berkeley Stunna 112 hanky panky.
It's a lot of names right there. For those that don't know, kind of like what is that bait? Is that
It's a jerk bait.
jerk bait? Exactly. Oh, that's pretty cool. Um, if you weren't fishing for largemouth bass or bass in general, largemouth, smallmouth, what would be your next favorite species to target?
I would say if I wasn't fishing for bass, I very much enjoy crappie fishing.
Crappie fishing. Yeah, good. Do you fish for when you fish for crappie? So is it catch and release or just to catch
Always.
and cook?
I don't like to clean fish.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, let's see. What was I gonna ask? I forgot the next question. Oh man, I forgot what it was. Okay, favorite fishery. What's your favorite fishery?
Table Rock Lake.
Table Rock Lake. Nice. Um, if you can only pick one lure to fish, you only have fish one lure for the rest of your life. What lure would that be?
Cinco.
Think any color specific?
Green pumpkin and black flake.
Interesting. Green pumpkin and black flake. I never heard that one before. Cool. Interesting. What's the worst bait or technique that you hate throwing? That you'll throw if you need to, but you just don't want to throw
A Cinco.
it. Same thing. Wacky rig.
Go. Absolutely. God, I don't have patience for that, but they get bit, so you do what you do.
Yeah, definitely get bit. Who was it that was on a tournament? I forgot the interview. Was it? Oh, I think it was the last Hobie BOS at, I forgot, South Carolina. The winner, I forgot his name. Please forgive me. Congratulations to the winner too. Nate, um, from Ontario, Canada, I think it was, and all he threw was just wacky rig singles the whole 2 days. That's all the fish he caught, according to what he was telling on the KBN podcast. You know, a tournament review. So yeah, it's one of those. If you're not a finesse fisherman, but they do work.
You know, I like catching fish if the only bait I can pick is the one I hate throwing the most.
Yeah, that definitely. I can totally relate to that. All right, Brendan. I really appreciate you taking the time to come up to the podcast. I wanted to give you a shout. I wanted to give you a chance to do any shout outs. I know you have sponsors. I know you have friends and family that kind of like help you with your social media and your, sacrificing their time with you to, to allow you to be more time on the water. So if you want to take a few moments to thank who you want to thank, any companies or families, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank all the hoodlums and hookset hoodlums, the cool kids. You know who you are. Third Eye Fishing, Max is the best. Old 18, Motion Roberts, an awesome dude. Outdoor Vibe for my OGs. Tackles company. I like to thank my family and my wife and daughter, especially for supporting my habits here. I'd like to thank you for having me on the podcast, and I
Well,
really
my honor, man.
appreciate our conversation and getting to know you more. And I hope to continue this as we move forward. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, again, man, my honor to have you on the podcast. It's like I said, a big fan of what you're doing on your social media account, and I know, and I appreciate the time. I know whether you're either busy or you have time off, and you're dedicated to doing the podcast. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast and introduce you to my listeners, who I'm sure most of my listeners follow you anyways. But again, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. Wish you the best moving forward. Both with your career and your kayak fishing adventures. So looking forward to what's next.
Thanks, Armando. Appreciate you.
My pleasure. For those out there listening, remember, if you're going to be on the water, wear your PFDs. If you're going to have a couple of beers while you're out there, just make sure you drink responsibly, stay safe. And big thank you to my sponsor, Douglas Outdoors. Go check out douglasoutdoors.com to check out their full lineup, LRS, X Matrix, and fly fishing rod. This is Bass Kayak and Beers on the Paddle and Fin Network.